Technology is the most powerful change in the world of education.
Everything changes.
Welcome to the Emerging Technologies in Education podcast, delivered to you by Clever Books Company. Dear listeners, thank you very much for joining the podcast Emerging Technologies in Education. And today's guest is Adi. Hi, Adi. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you.
That's brilliant. So I'm going to give Adi a word to introduce himself and let us know which country he's coming from and what he does in his professional life. Here you go.
Okay, so I come from the UK. I live in London, and I do a mixture of things. I write on technology and innovation for some reasonable sized publications such as Forbes and the BBC and so on. Then I consult with blue chip organizations about how technology will help them and affect their industries in the future. And I've worked with the British government, the National Health Service, the Ministry of Defence, and organizations such as Deloitte as well. And I think the whole technology and education thing is hugely important because we are in the midst of the whole fourth industrial revolution, and the change to our economy wrought by technology will make being able to learn hugely important, I think.
This is absolutely amazing introduction. Thank you very much. So you're a knowledgeable person, and I have the feeling you are definitely positive about using technology for the education purposes at any levels, I assume, B2B or even in the, like, no matter how old is the person who is studying actually something is. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's going to be essential, because if you believe the various studies out there about the disruption to the labour market and the requirement for people to be learning not just at school but throughout their life, and then being able to adapt to the changes in the labour market, then we are going to have to change the way that we learn so that it can be a lot more scalable, a lot more personalised, and better suited to our needs. And to do that cost effectively, we can't be spending several £1,000s or dollars every time we want to learn something new. It just wouldn't work. So I think technology will play a huge part in that. But I think it's also worth striking a balance and not just taking a tech-savvy, a tech-centric approach to things. There was a nice report from the UK government a couple of weeks ago looking at this issue, and they kind of found that it was the same old story. It was the people that had already got an education and were already benefiting from the qualifications and the knowledge they had that were doing the whole lifelong learning thing and learning the new skills that they need to adapt to the changes in the economy and the labour market. And those without the education and without the skills were being even more left behind. And we're kind of seeing the repercussions of that in a whole bunch of countries, and certainly not least the UK. And so I think technology has to work a little bit smarter than perhaps it has at the moment, rather than just trying to replicate the university model or what have you. And something that report advocated was having sort of offline communities and quite local help to help people access the digital learning opportunities that are available to them. So it's a sort of a nice combination of the offline and the online. And I think that kind of approach could work quite nicely in the future.
This is absolutely amazing. Like, I really loved it, because before that I had conversations about more like kind of school type of use. However, you've just mentioned a really important point, which means like it's not only about teaching our kids using the technology, but it also adults. And I think we are going that direction, that it is cost effective and it is actually a great solution for any age in terms of educating. So again, we can have a deep dive a little bit and go into the direction, exploring more. What you think of, and what kind of technology you think could be good for the educational purposes? Maybe some e-libraries, or maybe the open courses where teachers go and create like MOOCs, some educational content, and people can study on the go. Or maybe something else that you personally, by the way, use in terms of educating yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally a big fan of MOOCs, and think they're a fantastic thing, and their potential, I think, is only, we're only sort of pricking the surface of it at the moment, because they do offer good bite-sized learning very, very cost effectively, and allow people from wherever they are in the world to access tuition of world-class quality, which I think it's a fantastic thing. And yet, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think it's being fully democratized yet. I know, for instance, in the UK, institutions like the unemployment services don't use MOOCs yet to help get people back into the workforce. And it is still very much, again, various studies have proved that the people taking MOOCs are those already with a university education, often with multiple university educations, that have really bought into the idea of learning from such institutions and learning in the way that MOOCs are typically delivered. So I think they've still got a little way to go before we start reaching a mass market with that technology, and really making the difference to society that I think MOOCs can do. And I know from speaking to Coursera and edX and people like that, that's very much a mission that they want to fulfill, and they want to get the platforms and the knowledge out there to as many people as they can. So it'll be interesting over the next couple of years to see how they do go about doing that.
Totally love your point. I'm personally also think that using MOOCs, and I think it's a beautiful solution, and especially with all mobile devices that we currently have, it's something that you can use on the go. Like you take the public transport and you just open the course and listen, and you have a deep dive. You get involved in there, and I think it's absolutely brilliant solution. And what do you think about the emerging technologies like maybe virtual reality or augmented reality or 3D printing? Are they good for the educational purposes?
I'll touch mainly on sort of virtual reality, I think, because I don't know a great deal about the 3D printing side of things, but there are some interesting applications coming out of that, there's no doubt. And I think they do show an awful lot of potential, but they are at a very early stage at the moment. So I think it's probably a little bit too early to see whether they're going to sort of cross that chasm and make a real sustained impact on how we learn. But it is certainly interesting, and I've seen a number of simulators, and those kind of applications are quite popular with virtual reality. But even things like learning about Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and various neurological disorders, there's some interesting gamified approaches to learning in that sense as well. And I think those are particularly useful or particularly valuable to society, because by virtue of playing the game, you're also contributing to the scientific research effort. So I think they're really quite nice, and the more people that can play those, the better, not just for their own individual learning, but for the learning we have as society as a whole, and the better understanding that we have of various medical conditions.
Interesting point. I think that there is a big future behind the emerging technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality, and especially for educational purposes. I was actually recently talking to a couple of teachers from the US, and they did tell me that they see a massive impact on education on using those technologies. And this all thanks to the point that if you want with the kids to travel somewhere, there is no better cost-effective way to do so other than using virtual reality or augmented reality. And you can travel different countries and different like visit different sites, even inside the US, because US is massive, and it helps so much to learn and to get involved in different activities, like even without leaving the classroom. So it's absolutely brilliant. And one more question I have to you. What do you normally say to people who tell, I am very reluctant to the education technology and I don't really think it's a good asset for the classroom? So if you meet on your way people who are against using technology for education or using technology in general, what do you normally tell them?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think there's an awful lot of potential. I mean, technology is a tool. It's not going to be replacing teachers or replacing the human aspect at all. But I do think it does enable us to do our jobs better. So perhaps a nice example is in language technology. I'm trying to learn Czech at the moment. So it's something that I'm quite invested in on a personal level. And I still go to my classes every week and still have that human tuition for a couple of hours each week. But yeah, I do engage with a whole bunch of apps and so on as well to help me do that. And it's been interesting to observe the transformation in those apps and the growth in their capabilities. I was speaking to an Estonian company recently called Linguist, and they basically fed an algorithm something like 40,000 movies, and they all had French subtitles on, and the algorithm was looking for the French words that were most commonly used in the language and the most effective words, so that rather than learning the entire canon of French literature or the vocabulary, it was really honing in on the most important ones. And I think they were saying something like, you can cut out 95% of the words, and those 5% that you do learn are really important and will get you a long way. And you can learn those 5% of the vocabulary pretty quickly. And so it's really helping people to do their job more effectively. And I think they've been used by something like 1 million users now, and yeah, it's proven hugely effective. So I think if we remember that technology is here to help us rather than replace us, then that's probably quite a good mindset to have, and it keeps the relationship quite a healthy one, rather than sending it down the wrong track.
That sounds very interesting. Thank you a lot, Adi. I really appreciate your time and all the thoughts you shared. I think it's a knowledgeable podcast. Would you follow any of the educational resources where you learn about technology and education or technology in general and all innovations coming up if you want to share the time?
And I'm a big fan of Feedly, which is an RSS reader. And so I've got roughly 300 to 400 sources that I've got in my Feedly account. And then every time those publications publish a new article or a new podcast or whatever, then that comes into my Feedly account. And so I don't miss anything that they've published. And so I've got a whole bunch of places in there ranging from universities to business schools to consultancies, government agencies and so on. And that is probably the most relied upon resource in my work to make sure that I keep on top of things. It's pretty old school in that sense, and it's not particularly high tech, but it's invaluable. In terms of learning Czech, I very much love services like Memrise as an application to help me learn the vocabulary and the grammar involved in doing that. And I try and use that whenever I'm going on the train or the bus or whatever. I have that app that I use just to get in a few minutes here and there. And I love Coursera as well. They've generally got some pretty good courses on there that I try and fit in a few of those each year. to keep on top of things, especially in new areas like blockchain, and that's been quite a popular area at the moment that I've been trying to understand a bit more about.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Highly appreciate this, and I definitely will find all of them and share that with the listeners. Thank you very much, Adi. That was a great podcast, and I hope everyone enjoyed that. Have a great day.
Thank you. Everything changes.